But first, we will deal with a Senate bill from the Senate from the senator from the 53rd, Senator Mullis. We got to have a quorum first. We got three. We need four. 1, 2, 3. We need one more.
Senator Harrell's here. That's fine.
Senator Harrell's here.
Okay, you're good.
There we go. There you go. Playing dual role. We have a quorum now. We get underway, and the first item on the agenda is to have a word of praise from Senator McNeil, if she would return. Yeah, that's all right.
Our dear Heavenly Father, we are so grateful for this day and the opportunity that you've given us. Let us make the right decisions today. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen.
Thank you very much. And the first item on the agenda, what I will do is let everybody go around and announce their position and their names, and we can go on from there, starting with Senator McNeil.
Sheila McNeil from District 3, which is Brunswick, Georgia area.
Senator Clint Dixon from Senate District 45 is northern third of Gwinnett County.
And
Senator Sally Carroll, Senate 40, which is mostly in North DeKalb County, also includes parts of Gwinnett and North Fulton.
And also, this is Cindy West. She runs the office there. And if you need anything done, she'll get it done. So we appreciate you coming. Senator Mullis, if you'll come up and make your presentation, we'll get underway.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm gracious and humbled to be before this outstanding committee and the work that it does in helping our veterans, and I'm very grateful. Is a monument commemorating the Honorable Zell Brian Miller. Of course, most people know Senator Miller, Lieutenant Governor Miller, U.S. Senator Miller, and you served with him, I guess, didn't you?
Yes.
Yes, and he was an outstanding person, had a lot of influence and power. I first introduced this 2 years ago and met with a family who asked me to wait a couple of years so their foundation could get moving and so forth. So here I am again, honoring their request to wait a couple of years. Well, we know that Zell Miller gave us Hope Scholarship. I, in fact, voted for Zell Miller because of that very issue, to present lottery that would end up sending tens or thousands, or I don't know the amount, to college that would never have had an opportunity for higher education without it. Comes from humble background in Towns County. I read his book, Beautiful Home, put together by stones from the Mountain Creek. Had a lot of faith with his religion, his family. And I remember the first time that I met him, he is a U.S. Senator, and he was in the anteroom in the state Senate going to speak, and you could tell he was real passionate for once being a lieutenant governor of the state Senate, and of course before that being a state senator from that area, probably either Gooch's area now or Hatchett's district. And he gave a nice speech and talked about his days being in the state Senate. Very humbling. And as a freshman, Roy Barnes, being the governor at that time, invited the freshman senators into his office. And he said, a lot of people are angry with me because I appointed a Democrat to replace Paul Coverdale, who just died in office. He said, but I gave them the most Republican Democrat I knew, Zell Miller. So I thought that was funny. And then I went with Joe Tanner once to Washington, D.C. to visit U.S. Senator Zell Miller. And he said, Jeff, you know what we do up here, we have meetings to have meetings, we have press conferences, but we don't get a lot done. But the other day I was moving some logs at my house, and I found a copperhead nest. I said, I didn't call a press conference. I didn't have a meeting. I got a hoe and I cut their damn heads off. And I said, atta boy. Because that's how Zell Miller was. He was straightforward. You knew where you stood with him, and he didn't talk a lot of around the bush. He made things happen. He was a great leader for our state, and again, he gave us hope. So this plan to build this statue would be a diverse group appointed by the governor, lieutenant governor, and speaker, and minority or the Democrats would be a part of that too, as we made sure last time, and we've copied our bill from last time, that everybody would have a seat at the table, and they would have to raise money to build the monument, because there'd be no tax dollars allowed unless Senator Tillery had a lot of extra money.
All
No,
right,
I'm kidding. I'm kidding.
Thank you very much, Mr. Rules Chairman. We appreciate the comments, and thank you for demoting me from second to third on this bill. So
Are you third?
no, it's okay.
How did that happen?
I got to figure that out. That's all right. But anyway, all
I
joking
apologize.
aside, this is I think a good common sense kind of a good piece of legislation to honor Zell Miller.
Thank you.
And
And
he
the
was
speaker
a
is going to be the House host if we pass it.
That's right.
So.
Senator McNeil.
Where does the funding come from this?
Private.
Do you have an idea of how much it will cost?
No, ma'am, I have no idea. They had to raise money. But the commission that would be created, that would be their task too. And then, of course, anything here has to go through some historical society with the capital. You can't just build what you want to. It'd have to be approved. But the money would be raised on the private side by that commission. Unless you want to give a good donation, we can mark that down right now.
And that
But I do love the man.
Yeah,
Great man.
thank you. He was.
and that decorum committee is consisted of members from the House and Senate. I was a part of it with the Dr. King statue. So it is a process, and trust me, it takes a couple of years or more. So it will be done.
And Mr. Chairman, we had a tree loss here, so I found a great place for it right here by the Senate.
Okay, keep that in mind. What's the pleasure of the committee regarding the bill for? Yes, ma'am. Comment.
I moved you pass.
Wait a minute, I'm about to pass out.
Do I hear a second? Moved by Senator. Yes. Senator McNeil, second. Moved and properly seconded. All in favor, say aye. Opposed, like sign. Thank you, Mr. Rules Chairman.
Mr. Chairman, I'm flattered and humbled, and thank you so much. And please allow your members to contact me if I can be of service in my little old committee.
We'll deal with you later. Thank you so much. What we're going to do now is this was a request to have a hearing from my colleague, Senator Sally Harrell of the 40th. And what we're going to do now, in the order, I'm going to let her recognize some people. I'll have the people come up one by one per this sign-up sheet. And I just want to give her the opportunity to have some comments about the reason for this, and this is a situation where we're going to try to discover of what the issues are and deal with them. And if we got a member from our department here, of course we want to have them come up or make whatever comments they want to make. But trust me, listen, this is going to be short and sweet, to the point. No redundancy, so let's get it going, make your point, and I promise you get a good hearing, okay? Let's just stick to the program, and I'm on time, and everybody else got other committees too, so I just want to make sure that you know we're going to give you a good, reasonable hearing and to the point, okay? And I'm going to let Senator Harrell open up with some comments, okay?
Sure, thank you, Mr. Chairman. This issue of the conditions in our correctional facility has been brought to my attention way back to when I was first running for office and had open houses in the district, and some of those very people that brought that issue to me are here today. Likewise, in January, I read an article in the AJC that described the crisis conditions in our correctional facilities currently, and it was so heartbreaking that I knew I couldn't wait any longer to bring attention to this issue. So I went to our chairman and asked if we could have some time to have people speak, and he graciously agreed. So here we are today. I want to use this time just to shed light from the perspective of experts as well as people's personal testimony and their experience with their loved ones. So I appreciate everybody coming today, and I hope that we learn a lot and really increase the awareness so that we as policymakers can take action and do something about it.
Thank you very much, Senator. We're going to start right off with Marsha Dodson, Southern Center for Human Rights. She's on the phone. I believe she's
I'm here, Chairman.
Can you hear that? Go right ahead, ma'am.
Okay, thank you, and good afternoon, Chairman and members of the committee. My name is Marissa McCall-Dodson. I am an attorney and a public policy director at the Southern Center for Human Rights. I am very grateful for Senator Harold's leadership in bringing attention to this important issue. I realize I only have a few minutes, so I at least want to introduce you all who don't know the Southern Center for Human Rights, some of the work that we've done with regards to prison conditions in our state, and some of the recommendations that we have as far as how things can be improved. So the Southern Center for Human Rights is a Georgia-based organization that has worked for equality, dignity, and justice for people involved in the state's criminal justice system since 1976. Our state-level policy work aims to support lawmakers in moving legislation that expands equality, dignity, and justice for those involved in the system. To date, since the start of the pandemic, we have sent 2 letters to the Georgia Department of Corrections and Georgia State Board of Pardons and Parole, detailing our concerns with prison conditions during COVID-19, as well as letters to the Georgia Sheriff, the Atlanta Police Department, and most recently, we wrote a letter to the Department of Justice, imploring them to thoroughly investigate Georgia's prison conditions and the Department of Corrections' response to the pandemic. At this time, and you should have some materials in your folder, a presentation that I sent. You should see that there are 2 people who joined me in our state advocacy work at the Capitol. Ira Berkeley is our public policy associate, and Caitlin Barnes is our public policy counsel. When it comes to COVID, and I'll just jump right in, I want to make it clear to the members of the committee that we have had significant concerns about the treatment of people who are incarcerated in our jails and prisons for as long as we have been in existence, and that it seems to have only exacerbated since the start of this pandemic. What you should know in regards to how COVID is being treated and the concerns that we have, what we know is that unlike our general population, there are more people who are incarcerated who are at higher risk for serious complications. In fact, the Georgia Budget and Policy Institute found that 38% of our incarcerated population suffer from a chronic condition that puts them at higher risk for serious complications. So we should be paying as much attention to people who are living in our prisons and people who are working in our prisons as we are in other parts of our state when we're talking about congregated places. We believe that transparency on this issue is necessary. We know that as of today that the Georgia Department of Corrections was reporting that there have been 3,546 cases of COVID for incarcerated people. However, public health experts project that these numbers are likely much higher. In fact, it's estimated that these numbers are probably 10 to 12 times higher due to a lack of testing. We know that 89 incarcerated people have died since the pandemic, and unfortunately, the very first person to die of COVID in a prison was a gentleman right here in Georgia. We as an organization have we created a questionnaire to try to figure out what was going on and how people were being treated when the pandemic began. We have sent and received hundreds of questionnaires letting us know about conditions and treatment during this pandemic. We have also submitted multiple open records requests for information, yet we still believe that there is a lack of transparency about how uniform the response to COVID has been since last year.
Ms. Dodson, can I ask you to please, we're going to run out of time, please, can you give me an idea of, number one, because you said, what's the information about the 38% of the COVID cases and that kind of, can you give me some bottom line information on that so we can have, you're talking about open records, and can you just deal with COVID, for an example, you say there's no testing, to your knowledge?
I would not that there's no testing, but that there's not comprehensive testing, and that we have reason to believe that the numbers that are being reported are actually much higher than what we heard from GDC. When it comes to the people who have who suffer from a chronic condition, that estimation of 38%, we're talking about people who are considered medically vulnerable under the CDC's guidelines. So people who have diabetes, people who are chronically obese, there are several kind of factors that we know would deem somebody particularly at high risk to have serious complications from contracting this virus.
Okay, well, we thank you for your input, and I was making notes, and I'm sure everyone here is that COVID is striking everywhere, as we all know, and obviously, I'm sure the people that are going to give it some good attention, I know we are, and look at it as members of the public, as well as elected officials. So really, really appreciate your work in the community and what you do for the Southern Center for Human Rights, okay?
Thank you very much.
All right, and I apologize for the time, but we got so many people going, I got so many meetings going at the same time. Thank you, God bless. Thank you so much. Next up, we have Martha Thompson. If she'll come up and take the microphone right there, please, ma'am. And please, I'm trying to get everybody in who's here. I'll be very appreciative. Yes, ma'am, before you do fine.
Sorry. Thank you, everyone, committee, Mr. Chairman. I will keep it brief. I hope that you have received the one page of bullets. I believe Senator Harrell is passing those around. I'll go through them very quickly. I know you can read them, but I'll just kind of highlight some of the things on here. First of all, our prisons, jails, and detention centers are severely overcrowded, and I think, I don't have the exact numbers, but I think that if some statistics were taken on overcrowding, that would be very important. I do know that there is insufficient security, numbers of security cameras to prevent assaults, both by guards and by gangs. My son is at Phillips State Prison, and when he was at Augusta State Medical Prison, he was beaten in an elevator, and because of lack of cameras, he was thrown into a solitary confinement area where there were no cameras. So that's very important to me. I spoke with the warden very shortly after he was assaulted, and he said, oh yeah, we've identified a lot of places where we have blind spots. So I think that the wardens know where these are and they need to be covered. They don't have any heat and air conditioning. I don't know if you realize how hot it is in a Georgia prison in the South in the summer. It's miserable. So excessive heat and air, there is no HVAC. Insufficient ventilation, including missing and broken fans. There's a lack of facilities for therapy for mental disorders. Safe private places where there can be creative talk with therapists. Lack of security due to broken locks and lockers. And you would say, well, people don't want to be locked in their cell. Oh, yes, they do, for their safety. And so those locks need to work. And they need to have their items protected in their lockers. Fire hazards. One prison mom pointed out to me that they often black out windows, which can be a fire hazard for someone to know where to move. Insufficient water pressure for toilets and showers. The sewers often back up. There are broken and unsanitary phones and kiosks for communication. There's unacceptable level of sanitation, including mold and excessive trash. Rodents and pests are an ongoing problem. And if you are familiar with the yard is where people go outside for their daily exercise time. And it literally is just a yard with no shade, no protection. My son is whiter than I am, and he burns pretty badly when he goes out on the yard. There needs to be shade protection safely, and I understand they don't want to put covers so that the guards can't see from the towers, but there should be a way to safely shade people in the yard and, still have the security they need. And in moving to the yard, they have pens. I don't know if you've ever seen these or even if you are aware they exist, but they're like animal run pens. And that's where people who are in solitary or restrictive housing are housed for their 1 hour of exercise. These pens have no cover. It's like being a caged animal out in the middle of the sun. It's very inhumane and also very unsafe and dangerous to be in there, because of the heat and the sun. And then as a visitor, I find that the entrances to the prisons are very inhospitable. You often wait either in the very cold or hot for sometimes a couple of hours just to get in through security to visit your loved one. There are no restrooms. It's a very bad situation to get people into the prison. And then, of course, there's a lack of decent recreational and educational facilities. So much more needs to be done to make this justice restorative rather than punitive. And our systems are very punitive at this point. So I would encourage you to think about those, especially with mental health disorders, and treat them as humans. Thank you very much for your time today.
And then funny, I gotta tell you this, and we do it every year, I don't know what we've done the last couple of years. Every year, we tour that facility, and we found things to be adequate at the time, but we're certainly gonna take a look at the things you mentioned. I'm sure the commissioner and all of his staff would be interested in anything you say about that, and I'm sure they're taking it very seriously, so, we appreciate your input.
And this is a combination of other prison moms that have given me some notes as well. It's not just my
Thank you, we appreciate what you have written.
Thank you.
Appreciate it. Next we have, Mr. Richard Maddox. That's it. Is that Richard Maddox?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir. If you identify yourself, please.
Yes, my name is Richard Maddox. My son is currently incarcerated in one of our prisons here in Georgia. And Ms. Thompson is his mother. She did a wonderful job today. Thank you very much. She touched on basically a lot of what I wanted to also reiterate, but to have all of us now, all of us have a family member, friend, social who is suffering from some type of mental illness and has touched us one way or the other. Now with COVID, depression is at an all-time high in our general public, but it's even worse in our prison system. The rate of suicide has increased tremendously nationwide in our prison system, but especially here in the South. Without having regular visits on a weekly visits with family members, their inmates are, the depression is increasing. And now on the mental health side, when someone's suffering from either bipolar, schizoaffective, schizophrenia, depression, whatever it may be, it is now exasperated 100-fold.
Can you, if I may interrupt you, can you cite some suicide statistics if they're happening here in Georgia, in our prison system?
Yes, at Augusta State Prison, approximately 2 to 3 years ago, there were inmates on the mental health side that were dealing with tremendous amount of depression. One jumped from the second level of the housing and was deceased. Another one slit their wrists and died. Other ones ingested batteries that are used for radios and things like, ingested multiple batteries trying to commit suicide. The rate of suicide is horrific. My son himself, when he was previously at Augusta, in a 4-year period, had 7 people in his building die from combination of other existing illnesses, and a lot of them were just flat-out depression. They can't see their family, or their family lives far away. Logistically, what I'm trying to convey to you is that, our mental health facilities over the last 2 decades have been closed here in Georgia, which were horrific to begin with. So all of our mental health population is now in the prisons. And the staff is not adequately trained to deal with these people. They just not. All they do is give them medication, and medication without any type of talk therapy or therapy is kind of worthless. Like having a car, you put gas in it, but you don't know how to start it. It's not going to go anywhere.
Let me ask you.
Yes, sir.
Did he have a diagnosed condition when he went in, or is this something?
He had a diagnosed condition when he was diagnosed after his incident that he had. And in males in general in the North America from age 15 to 21, if they're going to have a psychotic break, it generally happens at that time. And sadly, it also involves law enforcement all the way from trespassing to possibly a serious crime.
But he's being treated for it, but you're saying the people who do therapy is not.
Correctly. There is no therapy at Augusta or Phillips. There is no therapy whatsoever. They give them medication, and that's all they do. There is nothing else. And as far as ongoing education, he was currently enrolled here in a local college. There is no education available whatsoever in the prison system. So you're basically staring at a wall with a mental issue, and you do the best you can. Okay. And it's very, very challenging. We encourage the committee and everybody here to please put funding toward improving our mental health facilities within our prisons so that the people have a chance when they go to be reintegrated into society on parole, release, etc., that they don't go out worse than what they came in.
Right. Thank you very much, sir.
Thank you, sir. Thank you to the committee for hearing me today.
Hope you have a good outcome with your son, okay?
Thank you, sir.
Yes, sir. All right, next we have Sarah. Is that Sarah? I'm sorry, I don't see is that R-O-T-H Roth?
Yes, Sarah Roth.
Thank you.
My handwriting is bad, probably. Thanks for giving me the opportunity to share what my family has gone through recently. My mother,
ma'am,
Regina,
could you pull that mic? Yes, ma'am.
Yeah.
Thank you.
My mother, Regina Solomon, was arrested December 31st, 2019, and she was put in Clayton County Jail. The day before, she actually was released from the hospital because she was having bad seizures. They didn't detect what would kill her in April, which was a brain tumor. Despite a record of seizures, she was put in with the general population. While she was incarcerated, she suffered from symptoms that grew increasingly worse. On March 8th, she had a bad fall. They put her in the medical facility there. She falls again on the 10th, and she had to be sent out to hospitals due to the extent of her injuries, multiple rib and facial fractures. The doctors, when they were talking to me, they thought it was an assault because it was so bad. She was transferred to Southern Regional and then to Grady's Trauma Center. At this point, the jail did not contact any family members to notify us that she was in the medical ward, transferred to Southern Regional, or that she was transferred to Grady. Not only did they not contact us, but her boyfriend, who was, visiting regularly, put money in her account, and sent mail, was not given any information. They told him, I can't remember what they told him, but he showed up for a regular scheduled visit, and they said that she wasn't able to see him. He kept calling, he kept visiting, and on March 31st, they said she bailed out. So at that point, we start trying to file missing persons reports, which the sheriff's office was kind of uncooperative. They said since they weren't married, he wasn't allowed to, so then I started trying to do that, and nobody would respond to my calls. But Grady's social workers would end up finding me. So what happened when she was released on bail is that she was intubated, so then they decided to release her because at that point, they usually want to stop paying the medical bills. And she was intubated, we know she has a brain tumor, so she was deteriorating. That time, we had no clue what was going on at this whole time. We were just looking for her and stuff. So, it took 3 weeks for Grady's social workers to find us. And we were robbed of being able to, ever have a conversation with her before she passed because, at that point, they were looking for me so I could, remove her from the ventilator, basically. So I did start to get a feeling that it's going to be hard to seek justice for what happened because the doctors at Grady told me that this was not really that uncommon. They said they oftentimes don't have luck in searching for family members of inmates, and that detention centers are usually not very helpful with providing information. Other lawyers I've talked to have also said they've had clients get lost when they get transferred to hospitals. And then also somebody contacted me and said something similar happened to their brother. And somebody here today also said that a similar thing happened to their son when they didn't know,
Well, ma'am, we're running out of time once again, but we got the gist of it, and we have the list right here, and we're going to try to follow up following Senator Harrell's lead in that regard. I promise you we'll do some follow-up on it and give you perhaps some written information and make sure we got all of your information, okay?
Yeah, I
All
guess just to summarize what a request would be is that it's the standard to like not contact families. So I would hope that, you know, a law would be put on the books, because it's like I had no legal recourse because no laws were actually broken. So, but thank you.
Any comment or question from members of the committee regarding this person testifying, this lady? Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you.
Appreciate it. Next will be Lee Culpepper. If you'll keep your comments as brief, but give us as much information you can.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, ma'am.
I think each of you are going to have a copy of what I'm saying. My name is Lee Thrasher Culpepper. I'm a clinical psychologist who's retired after working 40 years with the state and in private practice. And my younger son is at Phillips State Prison. He was a doctor who had a large medical practice. So I've become very aware of both what's going on in the prison system, but in the legal system. Perhaps you already know that the chance to be under correctional control in the state of Georgia is greater than any place in the world. Georgia has the 4th highest incarceration rate in the world, but our level of probation and parole is twice the next highest state, which is Pennsylvania. We have too many prisoners and too little money to provide proper conditions for rehabilitation, officially called correction. Rehabilitation requires care for the bodies and minds of our inmates, treatment for medical and mental health difficulties, opportunities for acquiring new skills and education, and an environment that allows for continued mental and physical stimulation is not only kind, but necessary to prepare prisoners to become productive citizens once they return to the free world. Right now, we have inmates idle, and many fill their time with drug use, which is rampant, and gang involvement. In an article published in the AJC, which Sally mentioned, in January 22nd, Christian Boone reported that homicides and suicides are way up. There are too few guards and staff members to even be aware of the inmates' needs, much less take care of emergencies. In his article, Mr. Boone cites a situation in which an inmate was stabbed and died, and that it took 30 minutes before any doctor came or anybody came to attend to his medical needs. And reportedly that day there was only one guard on duty for 188 inmates. The crisis is so great that last September 2020, the Southern Center for Human Rights, which I think you just heard Melissa comment on, wrote to the U.S. Department of Justice in order to request that they investigate Georgia's prison system. In the Department of Corrections annual report for 2019, 71% of the newly hired corrections officers quit before the year ended. Sherman Maine, formerly a captain at the Valdosta State Prison, stated that experienced staff is leaving as fast as they can get out of there. What you're left with is kids trying to supervise inmates they're afraid of. Many of the consequences of having an inexperienced and too few staff members is that maintenance and food services suffer, healthcare suffers because counselors are afraid to go to the dorms, inmates are placed in holding cells going extended periods without food, water, or even bathroom visits. Governor Kemp.
Ma'am, regarding that comment, can you explore that for just, what do you mean, for punishment or just for?
During COVID, people are sent into the hold. My son had COVID and did not tell anybody, so we're talking about 80% of the people in his dorm had COVID once they were tested. But people don't want to tell because then they have to go to the hold instead of a quarantined area where they're properly taken care of.
So they put them in the hole to keep them out of general population.
Right. Or if you misbehave, you also go to the
I got you. Thank you.
Governor Kemp has increased the entry-level salary 10%, going from $28,000 to $31,000, but that does not completely cover the loss of their income from no longer being able to get overtime pay. This COVID period has made everything worse for both inmates and prison staff. At Phillips State Prison, where my son is placed, prisoners affected by COVID are sometimes quarantined in the hole without heat and electricity. So what can be done? Certainly we need adequately paid and trained staff who can keep the prison environment safe. Once we have a safe environment, we can encourage volunteers from churches and schools to provide some services. We can provide educational and physical activities, meaningful work details for which they are paid a small amount. Nobody gets paid in Georgia, but they do in other states. We can allow inmates the motivating reward of an earlier release. They have pick points, but they never honor them. For participation in positive education and activities, we can begin to see our inmates as good people who have made a mistake for which they and their families are paying dearly. I feel sure you are listening to my hopes for a better prison world and thinking that this is impossible, since money is in such short supply. Yeah. But one very positive approach would be to close the old and run-down prisons. District attorneys and judges could review each prisoner's sentence and life situation and send a lot of people home. There's no need to have the length of most of these sentences. The state pays around $20,000 to $30,000 a year for a prisoner to house one person. On the medical wards, it's $190,000, an average of $190,000 a year to house somebody. There's so much to repair in Georgia's prison system. You could be the heroes who tackle these problems.
Ms. Culpepper,
Thank you very much.
Thank you for your comment. And please, I hate to cut you off, but we really need to expedite time so we can get everybody's comments in. Next, we have Roger Byrd. Mr. Byrd, how you doing, sir? Glad to hear from you. Second.
He's a former House representative.
Oh, she was telling me that you got big pay like we did at one time. Former representative. Good to see you, Mr. Byrd.
Thank you,
I
Mr.
think I know
Chairman.
somebody that works with me that can do you too. So
Could be.
yes.
It's good to see you. As I say, this is where I misspent my youth.
Yes.
I was here 22 years. Yes, sir.
Thank you for being timely and let everybody get in. But thank you for showing up and giving us some input right quick.
Mr. Chairman, I have written testimony that I've had distributed. So if you don't have it, I'll get it to you. But I think you
we
do.
have it, and if you can capsulize what you're saying.
I will. I wanted to talk very briefly about prison education.
Yes, sir.
Prison education, and I see my senator is here, Mr. Tillery, so it's good to see you too, sir.
Good man.
I want to talk briefly about prison education. I'm an associate professor of social sciences and director of prison programs at Brewton Parker College in in Mount Vernon, in the Vidalia area. We are very active in prison education, have been since 2015. I have taught or tested in 8 different state facilities in Georgia. And I have come to know the power of prison education. And I think it's sort of a neglected thing. It's something that Cesar Beccaria, who's known as the father of modern criminal justice, he said that if you want to solve crime, if you want to eliminate crime, then the solution is in education. But that, he said, is a barren spot. And it's a barren spot that's cultivated by only a few wise men. And I'm hoping that you wise men and women will see that as something that you might help to cultivate based on what you're hearing here today. There is a statement that I would like to begin with, and it's from Senator or Supreme Court Justice Anthony Kennedy. And he said that still the prisoner is a person. He or she is part of the family of humankind. Prisons in Georgia and around the country are basically isolated. They're in fairly rural areas. In my area, we have many. And people tend to go there to be forgotten. And out of that sometimes comes unintended consequences. And as we look at the analysis of why we ought to increase or be sponsors of prison education, we consider there are really 4 reasons to put somebody into prison. And those reasons are incapacitation, deterrence, retribution, or rehabilitation. And out of those, really, the only ones that really make any sense, the only one is rehabilitation, because retribution is obviously one of the worst reasons to put someone in prison, punishment, although there is an element of that. Deterrence, certainly. We deter someone who has been incarcerated or has the fear of incarcerated, but that only works so far. If it worked, when I was here in the 80s and 90s and we began to get tougher and tougher on crime, we would have no crime if it worked. It only works so far. Of course, then there's the incapacitation, which as long as someone's incapacitated, as long as they're in prison, they tend to be not committing crimes, but that only works while they're held. One of the best books out there is a book called "But They All Come Back." 95% of people who are incarcerated come back. They come back into society. And the question then is, do we want them to be better than they were when they went in? And that means rehabilitation. So there are many, we look at things as criminologists, we tend to look at things from the standpoint of consequential arguments. There are many good consequences for prison education. The first one is self-efficacy. It helps a prisoner to believe in himself or herself that they can actually do things. And many people in prison have very low self-esteem, no self-efficacy, and prison education helps with that. It also helps to keep them from deteriorating mentally or psychologically, which is a real problem in prison. When you go through a very long and dreary time, sometimes fearful, it tends to affect you, and people come out different. It helps people, education helps people to become self-motivated, helps them to want to do things better, and it not only does that, it reduces the effect, what we call the criminogenic effect, which helps people to become better criminals. Education helps to blunt that criminogenic impulse. And there are good consequences not only for the prisoner, but for society. People can get a job when they get out. And I can tell you, having taught many people in a number of prisons, they all want to get out and never see the place again. All they want to do is they want you to see their taillights in the driveway. And they're going to go home, they're going to rebuild their lives, and they're going to do good, they're going to raise their kids, they're going to do all those things. But they find themselves without skills to become employed. It helps them.
Can you speed up just a little bit?
Yes, sir. I'm almost done. I understand.
Right.
I've had to cut people off before.
I know it. Thank you.
And it helps to help people to reintegrate into society. It helps them to recidivism, to keep from going back to prison, and it helps them to rebuild their own families and communities. And there are great economic benefits. Now, here's the challenge. This is the one I wanted to show you. This is what's going on in prison right now. And I will tell you that in the Department of Corrections in Georgia, from the education standpoint, they do a reasonably good job. Mm-hmm. They do the best that they can with what they have. Some are better than others, but they do really make an effort. They're into it for the right reasons. But the problem is with the COVID, they're not able to hold class. Mm-hmm. They have had budget cuts, which you had to do. I understand that, which led to staff turnover and actually to they have the inability to meet, and they have lower presence of staff because of the no budget situation, and so they just have to stay in their dorms. Now that's a real problem. And I would suggest, with all the problems we have to face, if there's anything that maybe I could leave you with, is that an investment in prison education is worth it. It's worthwhile. There are great benefits. I have a book I'm going to leave you, Mr. Chairman, that I wrote with a colleague, and it's called Sisyphus No More, The Case for Prison Education. Sisyphus was the Greek king who was sentenced for his sins against the gods to roll a boulder up a hill for all eternity. And when he'd get the boulder to the top, it would always break away and roll back down to the bottom. Sisyphus is emblematic of what we have in many of our inmates. They can't ever finish their sentence. It goes with them forever. We need to do better. Rehabilitation is, and that takes money, but the investment is certainly worth it. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Honorable Professor. We appreciate the time, the service to the state of Georgia, and we'll take that under serious consideration. And I tell you that you mentioned that they do the best with what they have.
Yes.
And that is true, but we got to make sure that that communicates back and forth, and people have real concerns, and I know that each and every one of us are going to make sure that we listen with a good ear, a spiritual ear, to make sure that we can deal practically with the problems in a prison environment, to carry out the sentences of the courts and make sure the people are treated humanely. So
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and I do appreciate what you do. I understand the sacrifice.
Thank you. Next, we'll hear from Pamela, is that Nguyen? Nguyen, I'm sorry. Thank you, ma'am. Can you give us some brief comments, please, ma'am?
Sure. Thank you, Chairman and Committee, for listening to me today, and thank you, Senator Harrell, for your invite. My name is Pamela Nguyen. I am the founder of Restore Her. We're a policy advocacy organization that fights for the dignity and safety of women and unborn babies that are in the system, pregnant women. We do a lot of work with Southern Center for Human Rights, as well as Motherhood Beyond Bars. My colleague, Amy Ott, is here. I am also a women's health provider and also was formerly incarcerated. And during my incarceration, I was incarcerated in a private prison in Lovejoy, Georgia. I was pregnant, I was shackled, and I was placed in solitary confinement. Shackling caused me to fall and miscarry my baby. And during my stay there, I was blatantly told by the medical staff that they could do nothing for me as far as medical care. I never received any. They stated to me that they only had a family practitioner on board. They did not have any kind of contracts with OBGYNs or any other kind of women's health providers. Since that time, then I was also shackled when I was taken to the hospital. I was shackled to the bed while I endured my miscarriage. And then at that point, the guards discarded my unborn fetus in the trash. And so this gives you an example of the type of treatment and health care that women are subject to in the prison system here in Georgia. Since that time, I have worked with Chairwoman Cooper. We were able to last session pass HB 345, which bans shackling and solitary confinement of incarcerated women. However, although it is a law now, it is still happening. We have numerous reports. Southern Center for Human Rights also is in litigation because the laws are still not being kept. As far as transparency, we have a big issue with transparency and getting correct data. On the website, we have that data there that they provide, but as you heard earlier, is incorrect. We don't, as far as women are concerned, we have no idea the number of women that are incarcerated throughout the state of Georgia in county jails, state prisons, local detention centers, any of that. We do open records, and they blatantly tell us that they don't collect this information. So there is no way for us to hold them accountable for the liabilities of these women and their unborn babies. Also, I'm sorry, go ahead.
Go right ahead.
Also, you said that you do walkthroughs through these prisons. I would ask you to do an unannounced walkthrough. When they know that you're coming, they're gonna make sure you see the best of what they have. So if you would do an unannounced walkthrough and don't let them give you the tour, but you take your own tour and go where you want to go, I'm sure you would see different things than what you see when you go on those scheduled tours that you take. What am I forgetting, Amy?
Please introduce yourself, please, ma'am.
I will.
Okay.
I'm Amy Yard.
Brief comments.
Very
Yes,
brief.
yes,
Executive
ma'am.
Director of Motherhood Beyond Bars, and for 6 years, we provided all the childbirth education and support for pregnant women and new mothers in Georgia prisons. Obviously, COVID has shut those programs down, but one thing I would like you each to do when you go home tonight is look at the inmate profile that the GDC publishes every single month and do a search for the word pregnancy. You will find that the Georgia Department of Corrections has counted a pregnant male now for 2 years. This is not a progressive take on gender identity. This is a mistake. I was in the prison one day when there were 21 pregnant women in the facility. I looked up the profile that day. They had counted 2. So this leads to a real feeling that we cannot trust the data that the Georgia Department of Corrections puts out, and I would ask respectfully that you don't either. There needs to be a tremendous amount of oversight on the data that they're publishing. Secondly, there is also nothing keeping you from setting up a JPay account, finding an inmate in the prison to start writing a pen pal, and I will be happy to connect you with new mothers in our program who would very much appreciate the opportunity to tell their story to lawmakers. So you can be in touch with me, Amy, at motherhoodbeyond.org, and I will find you a pen pal.
Thank you very much, and that's really very much appreciated. And the one thing that's sort of curious about, you said that they don't know how many women they have.
No, sir, we don't.
Okay, well, we'll confirm that one way or the other, okay?
There was
Okay.
legislation
All
right.
last year that asked the jails to count, and they did not.
And they did not. They amended it. It was in HB 345. And on the Senate floor, when they voted on it, they amended it to remove the data collection, and it was removed from the bill. So we don't have any record of any data collection.
Okay,
It was
we'll-
Senator
we'll
Harper
look
that made
up.
the amendment.
We'll look that up. and make
And
sure.
last, I want to say that we currently have legislation now, SB 377, which is going to be hosted by Chairman Cooper and Representative Schofield, that asks for pregnant women's sentences to be deferred to 12 weeks after they deliver their babies before they come to serve their time, so we can eliminate the liabilities of having these women in prison while they're pregnant. And also to cut down on the cost of hundreds of thousands of dollars that's spent, and it's still inadequate health care on them being in those places.
Thank you very much, ma'am. Appreciate
Yes,
it.
thank you.
Senator Harrell, at this time, I'll recognize you. Oh, I'm sorry.
That's all right.
Senator,
Thank you
Go
very
ahead,
much,
Senator. I'm
Mr.
sorry.
Chairman. I just want to ask, I represent portions of Clayton County. Did
Yes,
you say
ma'am.
you were in the facility? All this happened in a
Robert
facility in Clayton
Dayton,
County?
Robert Dayton Detention Facility in Lovejoy, Georgia. It's a private jail prison. Yes, ma'am.
Your mother was in Clayton?
And we
Senator
currently
Harrell,
have 9 pregnant women in the
we
Clayton
got to
County
move
jail
on.
right
Thank you,
now.
ma'am. We'll
Okay,
follow up
thank you.
after the meeting, okay? Please stay around. Senator Harrell.
Yes, I have written testimony from Laura Nieto, N-I-E-T-O, and I will summarize it. Laura, basically, she has a loved one who has been incarcerated with mental illness for 11 years. She brings up the vaccine. She wants these people live in very close proximity, so she feels that all of them should be vaccinated, not just 65 and up. She's looking for more activity, which speaks to Dr. Byrd's presentation. She brought up the air conditioning, too hot, no air conditioning in the summer, no heat in the winter, and believes in the rehabilitation and mental health. She said most of these people who commit a crime while suffering from mental illness do end up in prison. She's advocating for an idea of hers, which is to open a mental health rehabilitation center in Milledgeville, where there's some old government buildings that can be used, and ideas about using volunteers to do various things, which would provide the activities that are needed. And this would reduce the number of incarcerated people from jails and prisons, and that's a good summary.
All right. Any more comment from members of the committee? Observations, comments?
I just have one quickly,
Yes,
Mr.
yes,
Chairman.
Senator, go right
I was
ahead.
real concerned about testing for, not testing, but COVID vaccinations for inmates, and I had called one of the sheriff in one of my districts, and I was told that they have not given, for 65 and over, and they had not given any because they have not had any as soon as they are delivered there. So do we know from, I guess, the Department of Corrections, when will those persons get vaccinations?
We'll
And how many?
we'll follow up and
You'll
give you
follow
that
up and
we'll
get that
follow
to
up
us?
and
Okay.
put that information out to the public. But let me say, any other member of the committee have anything, comment, or question, questions or comments? But we really, yes.
If I
Senator
may
Harris.
just say a
Yes,
few
by all
closing
means.
words. In just closing, I would like to remind everybody that the story that has been told today is really the same story that is the story of the beginning of our state. This story is the soul of our state, because the colony of Georgia was started by General James Oglethorpe, who came here and started this colony because he wanted to clean up the prisons in England. So this story really is the soul of our state. He moved, his goal was to move prisoners over to Georgia and give them a second chance by getting them started in a business, which happened to be silk production. But all I'm saying is that we should look back to our own history and the story of our own beginning to be inspired to do something about this crisis in our correctional facilities that we have today. Thank you.
Well, let me say on behalf of the committee, we thank you for coming. We thank you for your comments, and certainly we're going to get some answers, and I'm sure the people who work at the Department of Corrections who do a lot of hard work, and I'm sure, like you, anybody else, there are mistakes made, but at the same time, I'm sure they got the right intentions, and we're here as an oversight committee. What we'll do, we'll engage with them in dialogue and come up with some answers for you and some corrections where possible, okay? We thank you for coming, and God bless. Have a blessed day. Thank you. We adjourn.